This is 9/11. Okay. Do you have Anna in class today? No. No. She must not be feeling so well. She's so pretty sick. Thank you for helping to set up. I kind of been trying to make sure I cared for a few housekeeping. Okie dokie. Chunky. Oh, I'm assuming we'll be back here over in any minutes. A little bit trash. Good idea, no farmer clothes on. Hello.
Hi. We almost died.
Why?
Actually, Luke almost died. Luke and Stephanie almost
The apple
died.
tree out in the library.
Yeah.
A big branch fell out.
Like as you're walking
As
past,
we're
this is
walking
like
back.
crack, 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 and then it fell.
Nobody did that.
No. That's
They were
pretty
like
big.
far enough away from it, but it was like right there.
Okay. Well, I think that everyone that will be here is here. So hello, Marianne. We'll pray. I have a lot that I'd like to get to today. We'll pray for a good spirit weekend and homecoming, many events, and for health for the soccer and volleyball team, as well as just the parade and regatta. I don't envy you decorating a boat this weekend. I had made one boat, and we did fairly well the last round. We sunk. So all that work for naught. It was fun though. Okay, let's pray and then we'll start. And do you guys have anything? We'll pray for Anna to feel better. She hasn't been in class for a little bit and hopefully soon be on the mend. Okay, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the sun that's coming out. And thank you for your goodness and your power. Help us to never forget the good things you've done for us. I pray that you would encourage us today, help these students, that you would help them to not be too weary and that they would have joy in the journey. Give us wisdom and discernment for all of the decisions we need to make. I pray you would just be glorified in this class hour as well as our day. We pray this in your name. Amen. All right, so let's... Okay. Alrighty. So, most of you have done your studio policy. If you haven't quite gotten around to that, it's not the end of the world. Something that I do want to bring to light for all of you, because all of you have different tuition costs. And what I would love to see happen is this. if we are going to do the Faith Music Academy, what I'm going to do is I am serving my friends in the Des Moines area. And I also have been reading yours and kind of seeing where you're at. So we are not going to be exactly what either one of you are. My goal is that you would not reduce what you earn, but it would just about stay the same, but the school would kind of retain some of the fees to cover costs like tuning and secretarial type things too. So just so you're aware, but someday down the road, whatever policy you just created, I think you need to revisit and update it every year. Let's say you move from New York City to Iowa. Do you have a different cost of living between them?
Mm-hmm.
So your rates should be sensitive to that. If you're in a rural town that is not growing, it's dispersing, you're going to need to consider that as well. So we are in Ankeny. It is growing like crazy. Sometimes the traffic is like, where are all these people? Kind of crazy. So there are many factors. We're going to talk about that more later, but I just want you to be aware. I don't want to catch you off guard. And it would be good if you're starting new students that are coming to faith, just make sure they're aware that there may be a few, not changes as far as you as the teacher or any of that, but just some functional changes, just so that we keep a good standard. There's been a few people that have asked me, hey, I'd like to teach some students, and I'm happy to have them teach, but I want them to come through and have it, take the classes, make sure that they will be a good reflection on the school, not a poor reflection on the school. Because most families, are they going to assume that they're teaching at faith, that faith is endorsing it in some way? Or is it aware of it? Would you say, what would your assumption be? Yeah, I would say yes. So, and I want there to be like, okay, if we are all teaching in Faith Music Academy, we're all going to abide by this policy for makeup, all of us, so that it's not like, oh, you should go with us, and she's like super nice, like I can cancel 2 seconds before and she'll do it the next day. That isn't good for the professionalism. It's creating inconsistencies. It's not helpful for that parent. Because if you can keep your life organized, that makes you a better teacher. And that's if I could, dear younger me, tell myself, I used to schedule like around whatever the families wanted, and so I was like teaching in all these odd hours. Was it hard to be organized on my A game? Yeah, because it's, oh, I forgot that one thing. Where if I have 3 concentrated teaching days, do you think I can really be a lot more structured in that time? You bet I can. So, and usually for me, I have my kids with, they had their lesson yesterday with Mr. Chuck, plays in the Des Moines Symphony, has for 30 years. He's the nicest thing. He had a lesson with Lily, she just turned 6. And she said, that was so fun. And I was just so thrilled with such a good experience. He's only available Tuesdays at 4. It does not work well in our family structure, but I like him. I make it work. So if he tells me when he's available, I find a way to try to make it happen. So don't be afraid of kind of setting what's going to be helpful for you and having them just fall into that. Okay, I think that is more than enough on that. Okay, so let's get rid of that precious screen that I don't want. Bye, bye. Okay, so the middle C reading approach. I'm just going to pass around a few of these lesson books. The lesson book is often where you're going to look for their reading approaches. Does that mean that's the only place that you'll find it? And you can like alternate too. I have a box in front of me. Mrs. Diane Smith, she has donated a ton of stuff. This isn't for adult, but like these are all introductory piano books of different methods, different kinds. And for instance, she gave very vintage, the Oxford piano course. Obviously, teaching this with a 5 or 6 year old now.
There's no color. Yeah.
Now this is the third book. So you can see the pacing is pretty intense. So this one's for class instruction. So you can see that probably for the music major, kind of cool things. Mrs. Diane Smith had Tobias Mattei is in her lineage of piano teachers, so that's kind of cool. He's a really famous teacher. So this is the first book, Oxford Piano Course. The first book, look what they're already doing. So the first book. First book.
Wow.
So now the first book, it says following the beginners singing and playing. So they're not just like your first lesson, that's where they're going. They do a whole book on singing and then like a lot of rote playing. Okay. So you guys are surveying there. Like these I don't want you to do for the piano method review, but it's kind of neat to look through these. So I'll put these in the resource library. Be gentle with them. You could not purchase this anywhere or find this. So this is kind of like a cool vintage, kind of fun. Let's see the published date, 1927. So been around for a long time. Now, in here you also have a few that I'm not having you review. I'm not saying they're bad. David Carr Glover. So, and Martha Muir and June Montgomery, you've probably heard their names before. Martha Muir does a lot of really nice, not children, but like middle-aged student repertoire. She writes a lot of really attractive things. So these aren't bad books. It's just, you know, I would say the graphics are not as thrilling as some of the others. And do you think that children these days are kind of have high expectations for that kind of thing? So I don't want to be like kids are like immersed in like Google Classroom and all digital textbooks, and then I have a book that there's 0 pictures and it's super boring. They're not going to leave your lesson saying that was fun. I thought it was really interesting the book that he gave Lily. All of the notation is giant. And I thought, for her, it was so much less intimidating. So I thought to myself, it'd be cool to blow up all of my music onto 11 by 17, just by introducing stuff. I think that might be something like an idea that came to me, and that there's so much truth to, like, even though it's the same information, the presentation really makes the world of difference. So that's something to food for thought. So advantages. You're looking at the Premier piano. They're gonna, Dr. Lancaster is going to give us kind of a rundown on all of Alfred's things. I did put under pages the link to all of the videos for Music for Little Mozarts of Dr. Lancaster and Gail Kowalczyk doing and teaching all of the pieces. And look really cute. I didn't get to watch all of them. It would have taken me a long time. But that is really neat, and they are delightful teachers too. So are Nancy and Randall. But so cool to just like educate yourself on ideas that you could do, to think outside of the box. Because sometimes these papers, you don't really know how they're intended to be used. And that can be really helpful. I've met Diane Heidi. She teaches in California. She's a lovely teacher. I watched her some of the videos of her teaching. I put on teaching teenage students. She has an article that she wrote. I put that on the pages too. Anyway, I would say not all of the time, but usually they're going to use a blended approach. Where it's not just middle C, but it's also long bark notes like C, treble G, and then the F clef.
That's this.
This one here,
Yeah, this one's fine.
I think this one is more middle C in its approach. How long she stays there will vary. She has always teacher duets, which I do like that. Middle C position, C position. So she does it. She does introduce multiple. If it was strictly middle C, you would not see C pentascale for a really long time. So middle C, you're shared for a really long time. When you go out to the pentascale, that's actually new guide notes. That's not just middle C. I mean, you are there on 2C, but it's not a middle C. So interesting. What is the problem here?
I don't know what that is. When they both start.
So like you're talking about like with the beginning songs that don't have staff but have fingers. If they're not in the middle C position, that's what you're saying. That means they moved.
Yeah, yeah.
So like this, they're on the black keys.
Like that's how
Is
it
that kind of similar, but maybe?
Yeah, and that's called rote playing. Where do you have any staff there?
Nope.
That isn't been introduced. So that's rote. There's lots of value to that. Because how many at school do you do a lot of like independent things with 2, 3, and 4, or 1 and 5? You think if you're right-handed, what does your left hand do? It sits on a paper and holds it there. So we want to awaken that awareness of like 2, 2, 3. That takes a little bit of time. So not introducing, so it's staff counting finger numbers all at the same time. That's like overwhelming. So there's kind of a blend. They're in this book here. Let's see. Keyboard strategies. Okay, under here is a pedal book for pedal studies. My first pedal studies.
I like the piano. I like the piano tablet. Yeah, I like that.
For your study of piano, when do you feel like you started using the pedal, the damper pedal?
I don't even remember.
Don't
So my
remember?
hands were pretty fluent together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just food for thought because we're talking about the average age beginner. Why does someone fall in love with wanting to study the piano? Is it the music with no pedal? Probably the ones that sound really good. So I love books that there's a teacher duet that incorporates the pedal, that they get to start sounding really amazing. And then even a piece like the Westminster
It's like
Chimes.
literally the first song has pedal.
Yeah. So what I even sometimes do is the same piece that you saw earlier, the rote piece. Why not say, hey, just for fun, so that it sounds more like a lion procession, let's put this damper pedal down, and then you're going to play what you just played 2 seconds ago again and see what that sounds. And let them experience the pedal, because do we want to make connections with our oral skills and the pedal and connecting that with our feet early on, or wait until a lot later? So will it be hard for them? And I can let them stand and push it down. Or you can get a pedal extender. There's lots of things you can do. But be sure that you're not waiting until they're advanced to do it. So there's in here introduction to pedaling, and we'll maybe talk about that a little bit more as we come to it. That's middle C, and you can see not all of them are strict about that. So intervallic, okay.
I know. And I was looking at that book, I was like, whoa, there's so
This
much
is like
theory
in
and
level
second
2
level
theory.
book.
I didn't even learn any of this until I went to college.
No, and they have all the chord progressions. They're like 1,
So
4,
is that
7, 5, 7.
that's Diane Heidi? Okay.
It's like a level 2 book.
That's like amazing. I wish I learned that.
I
when
know,
was-
same.
Now,
or became
she
it.
lives in San Francisco. She charges a lot. So, do you think you have a highly educated populace in San Francisco? What would you think? What would be your guess?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have people that are working like tech jobs, probably pretty intelligent, so their children pretty intelligent. I'm not saying this is across the board, but those parents that are willing to pay $50 for a half-hour lesson, okay, they're probably in the higher earning, and so then they're probably pretty sharp, so their children are going to be sharp. So this is what she created for her students. But let's say you have a student that just is taking like amazing. They are taking it on really fast. You could maybe put them in a method that they would go more quickly. If you have twins and one's really smart and the other one's not, maybe you could put them in, they're both in primer books, but you know that the pacing is faster on that set of books. But the child won't know that. And that won't create any rivalry or anything. Now, keep in mind, she has that's her first book, and then that's 2. I think she doesn't have a 1A, 1B. She doesn't have a 2A, 2B. Baber does.
I don't know. I don't understand why. Why don't they just go 1, 2, 3, 4, like all the way through?
I think
Reinforcement.
I think what I did was, there was one time where I was moving to a new book, but she thought that I was good enough to skip the A part and go right to the B.
Mhm.
So I think
You can use your discernment, but let's say I do not want you to be the type of teachers that keep a child with a song until they get it perfectly. If they are bored with it, learning has ceased. Okay, you're gonna look for a new piece that tackles the same concept. Okay, so if you hate the hymn arrangement that you're currently on, I'd rather give you a brand new one than try and make you fall in love with it. Okay. So I like to, so they didn't do so great with the quarter notes in this piece, but you know what, they generally got that fairly well. We're still moving up, okay? Where you have a student that maybe they are progressing through the book, but I would say that there's still a little bit of proficiency lacking and maybe they need a little more reinforcement. That is where going to a 2B route would be great and important. And interest can be a factor. Some students love a challenge. Have you encountered students that they love to be challenged and pushed? Others, they fall to pieces, right? So there's all different factors for why you might do one or the other. But is it fun to get new books? Even for me as an adult, I enjoy that. I love going to the bookstore and picking a new arrangement. So that's another factor, is that you could be getting fresh books with new repertoire more frequently. Yeah, so it's a little more intense than others, but she is probably teaching above average students too. And there's all the sharps.
Yeah, I did not learn that until I got to like my college theory class that I took before I came here.
Sure. And then
College
you
theory
walk through
class.
that.
And I was like, whoa.
I think another reason to maybe get your middle school age student involved in like a comprehensive keyboard exam or a contest, so there's theory exams and whatnot, is they will get kind of a well balanced, not just the playing side of things. There is that aspect, but it's also some music history facts and stylistic things that go with that, and then the theory that goes with that, and the technical skills. So it's kind of the full package of, because all teachers, do we tend to want to emphasize the strengths we have in our own teaching? So if you hate a theory or you don't feel good about it, you're not going to be dying to teach more lessons on it. So 5-finger patterns, staff, and on the keyboard, introduced with the multi-key. The 5-finger patterns, are they useful, and I make you learn them as pianists for choral warm-ups. So they do serve a good purpose. But is all of our music in a 5-finger pattern? Is it? Are they going to be able to be C and C, both hands all the time, and moving that way?
Like never.
So, a great idea. Maybe the book introduced the 5-finger scale. You could say, hey, I want you to play the 5-finger scale, and I want you to play any white key melody all over the piano with your right hand. And so they're still safe here. And then see if they can create something and move around on the piano and see how usually white keys and white keys sound pretty well together. And then it would be like, just for fun, let's shift you down to like F. Let's see if most of those white keys still sound really good. So you can give them some discovery moments where, yes, the book introduced C, but why not you do some improvising off of that and explore beyond that? Another thing you can do is, let's see if you can play that song that was in C pentascale. Let's try in G. Now let's move it to F. So you can fix some of that stuff by being really intuitive. Pay attention. And then that's not hard. And you think it's when their songs are super easy, it's good for them to learn to try it in a new spot. So those are things you need to kind of be aware of. Just because a book introduced just C pentascale, I can show them that, hey, look at that, that's your F, so you're going to have your 2 and your 4 on the B flat. And see how it sounds just like the F, because the pattern is the same. You can show them that. So, and melodic lines are easiest to read directionally. So like up, down, you're not going to pick melodies early on that are extremely disjunct. Now, what I like about when you ask them to do some improvising is that they can move around and not just stay in that. Tell them you can show them and demonstrate that. If we think through most of the keyboard repertoire, which I think I have a fairly good representation of what's written, it's homophonic. We have one melody and then harmony, for the most part. You have Bach fugues that they have multiple subjects, counter subjects, and so on. Now, in the multi-key approach, they kind of advocate for, I had a student just before you guys came, an adult student came. So I'm going to ask him if I can video our lesson time together. It's really neat because he's an adult learning as a beginner. He has some musical experiences, so some things are totally brand new, other things are review. But what's fascinating about him is he played Ode to Joy from Book 1 of Faber. And are there dotted rhythms and eighth notes in Ode to Joy? The real theme? There, you do. But the way they introduce it is all quarters and half notes. Just so that and he's like, why does it feel weird and look weird? Well, because you're used to hearing eighth notes and that's what you want it to be. But just so you know, the reason they didn't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of notes. They wanted you to focus on getting your finger numbers and letter names and all of that. That's enough. You don't need to have to read and count rhythms. So the issue with that, though, is now what his ear and what is written is different, and that's something that this approach can be a challenge. I like to give a lot of sight reading. There's a sight reading book that goes with all of Faber, and I usually have one of those. I don't have them buy it. I own one of them, and I just kind of, every time they come, we do a little bit, and I'm getting to evaluate. So then I'm on flashcards a little more and might send a note home to mom and dad that, hey, I sent home flashcards. We're working to kind of ramp up their reading. Their ear is super, super strong, but I'm trying to bring them to be equals instead of uneven. Yes, Sam?
Do you just have them like read it like in the lesson? So you just have them do 1 or 2.
Yeah. Kids don't really, especially if they're 7, understand the concept of sight reading. Okay? And I just tell them, this is just kind of like a pop quiz. I'm not taking a grade, but I'm just kind of trying to do a little window into your reading. And it's not something they have to bring home. So they have a sight reading book that goes with each of the units. And some students, I know that they're reading really well. And every time you get a recital piece, do some sight reading with that. And you can kind of be getting an idea. I had a really good ear as a kid, so I heard my brothers play it. And so I knew the way it should sound, so I really wasn't reading. Which thankfully she was intuitive enough that she was doing, like with the whiteboard, reinforcement of the note names, flashcards. She'd do like pop quiz, find middle C, find treble C, find bass F, find, and then she would reverse it. Okay, this note in the piano, where is it on the staff? And write it on. So there's tons and tons of ways that you can help them. And then even there's flashcards that show the same or different. Is this up or down? Or repeat? Is this a third? Is this a sixth? So it's not just those, it's also interval recognition as well. So if you use flashcards correctly, they can be really engaging. That's where my staff on the floor, I say, okay, with your right and left feet, make a fifth. Okay, great. Now, keep your right foot fixed, and now make a fourth. Okay, keep your left foot placed, now make a third. And if they're really sharp, maybe you could say, now make it minor. Okay, then I use an X in my extras to represent the sharp. Oh, okay. So the issue here too, you can see in this one here, I would say it was kind of a multi-key, and chord playing is introduced fairly early. If you're 7, are your hands really good at chord playing yet? So physically they're really hard for, like I watched Lily, like I played a chord and I was like, oh, and I asked her to do it. I'm not thinking that's so easy and so fits my hand so well, but she's like trying to reach and stretch it out. It's a lot. So she can do unisons fairly well, but the chord playing is a lot to incorporate. So maybe a multi-key would fit better in an 8-year-old singer than 6. So it kind of depends. The good commendable thing of this method is that its keyboard is very exploratory and there's lots of creativity. That's a very positive thing. But should we be incorporating improvising and creativity and sight reading in all, whatever method we pick? Francis Clark said, a great teacher can use any method and be great. A bad teacher can use a great method and be bad. So, and didn't your piano learning summaries evidence that? Okay, so it's not just the teacher. The interval, yes.
Can you give a quick review of what multi-key projection is again?
So, middle C, everything's centered around the thumb. Multi-key, where it's hand positions like C, G, F. Multi-key meaning you're all over the piano, a lot in the hand position. So like C position, F position, G position, D position, and you have chordal playing very early on. So the positive is very satisfying. If you have chord playing early on, then that sounds better. Where if you kind of play a ton of teacher duets, will they get that sound satisfaction? And they're doing the audio recordings online or whatever. So you can, the weaknesses and strengths you can combat with a lot of creativity. I've had where my teacher never played with me. Terrible. You want to make sure that they have multiple experiences that aren't just one-sided. So the multi-key, you have positions and you're kind of all over the keyboard with chords. Is that nutshell of what that is?
So how often would you say would be good to play the duet, the teacher duet?
Okay. If they come back and they're like, they're prepared for the lesson, I can see that they practice. We always do their duet. Always. Now, if they're like, I never wanted to play this, I didn't practice. Oh, well, I wanted to play the duet and it was going to sound so magnificent. So disappointed. And if they know that when they are prepared, we are going to do a beautiful performance. And I practice lifting on and lifting off, because in recital, whatever we've done on a regular basis is what you're going to get. So, and that's why for about a month and a half before the recital, I have them play their piece, bow for the audience, gracefully put their hands up, gracefully put them out, because if you don't rehearse that, what you will get is horrible bowing, and they'll walk on and walk off and they won't do anything. But if you show them, you bow, hello, toes, and then you come back up. And even giving them a chant of what they're going to actually be thinking when they do it will be good. So all the time, you want them to have as fun of an experience as quickly as you can, because you think a lot of kids quit their first year. Or they decide in the first month of lessons whether they like it or not. And it's pretty difficult to overcome that. Very difficult. So a lot of what I make sure, and I sometimes invent, use your harmonization skills. If there's not one written, I make one up. And this time, I'm going to play it. Can you play it different than I wrote it? It says to play it bold. Can we now pretend like we're like this princess in fairyland? And I'm going to play a totally different accompaniment. See if we can make it sound like that. They love that kind of stuff. So being inventive off the cuff, it will take a little time when you're comfortable to try that. But once they feel like safe with you and you feel safe with them, you won't feel strange trying that kind of stuff. And they love hearing you do crazy stuff. Intervallic. Okay, so middle C and the intervallic, a lot of positioning is key. Where intervallic is just like in the title, you have intervals are really, really important. Delayed use of the thumb and pinky. What do you think that is?
These ones are really hard for them to like move independently.
And if you have a small child, they have tiny fingers, and so their pinky is not as strong. So you're kind of starting from the strength of the hand. The middle fingers are more strong. And we often have a lot of black key playing. We don't want their thumb. I mean, look how you have to change your hand. You want them to have a nice alignment as early as possible. So introducing the thumb presents some new challenges. Not to say that it's wrong. Thumb is important. And with my adult students, I address the thumb first lesson. And as soon as I am working with a student to get their thumb and pinky on the piano, I just have them stand up. And then I'll say, okay, when you're standing there, are your hands like a soldier like this usually? Not usually. Usually as I'm walking and I feel pretty relaxed and good, it's just got a natural curve. And then I pick theirs up and I see theirs, and look at that. I didn't even have to do anything. It just kind of feels right. It feels good. It's not crunched. It's not like a bear claw, but it's nice and relaxed. And it doesn't require a lot of energy for me to do that. So that's how I want them to feel. Because sometimes a student will be holding their arm in the right position, but they're holding it there. How tired are you if you hold your arm up for 30 minutes in a lesson? Worn out. So you want them to find a resting point and model that and just show them, look at that cool position on the side. That's so cool. Few folk or popular tunes are apt to be included. The cool part of multi-key is there are a lot of stepwise melodies. Okay, like joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Stepping up and stepping down, all steps. Okay, that is great for a new beginner. So we have a lot at our disposal, and we can make it sound bigger earlier. With intervallic, you're reading all over the keyboard, which is good. They're not fixed to a hand position or fixed to middle C. That's good. But the melodies you get to be a little bit not as cool or fun. Is it rewarding to play songs you know? I remember loving that when I got to play a song like when the Saints Go Marching In. Songs that I was familiar with that wasn't like this weird raisins and almonds, you know, didn't mean a thing to me. Okay. Do you remember raisins and almonds?
No, like
I just remember
similar.
thinking sometimes if I was a composer, I would pick cooler music than this. So directional reading is important. Something that I like to do with kids is, you know, in the Faber where it has like the sailboat and you write the contour of melodies is one of the things they do in book 1. I love that because some melodies like somewhere has a really giant leap at the beginning. That contour is like the sailboat went up and then came back down. So that directional reading, fixed guide notes. Now, if you're doing even a middle C approach, you can still introduce the guide notes. Like, it's the first time I see the staff, I'll just tell them, like, there's some anchor pitches. Okay, these are like gonna hold you fast, kind of like on a tricycle, the 3 wheels. They're really important. So middle C, where that is, and then the 2 dots circle the F, right, in the F clef. That's a really anchor note. And then we call it the G clef because it circles the G. That's another anchor. These are anchor pitches where you find middle C, bass F will be under that, G will be over that. Those are like, you can kind of orient where you should put your hands. So even if you are using a method that's doing more middle C, I'd introduce those other guide notes too and drill them like, hey, find treble G on the piano. Okay, where's that on the staff? Okay, now where's bass F? Why is it so important? Okay, it's my anchor pitches. I can find my way in almost every piece. So have you ever had students who are like, where do I put my hands? Show me where to put my hands. Is that going to be a problem when they go home if mom and dad have no clue of what to do? So be sure in the lesson you're really making sure they know, not just that they can say this is middle C, but where is it on the piano? Okay, and if you have 2 pianos in a room, have them go over to the other piano, because sometimes maybe Steinway and Sons is longer, and so they'll think that it's like a letter they're looking for. You want to help them to kind of, on multiple different pianos, find their way. And then just even scanning through the book. Okay, where would your hand go in this piece? Okay, good. Let's go to the next one. What about this piece? And see if they can do that on their own without you. Because you can't always be there. So they experience a variety of patterns and without key signatures. So they do not introduce in this intervallic the key signatures. Okay.
Are there any like popular ones that use this?
Like
favorite disease? Yeah, like what method books would use?
So I would say Faber has a blended, because I would say it has both intervallic and middle C in it. Now, how they would be different, intervallic, if you were doing that, you don't really get a lot of key signatures talked about. They vary incrementally, like it's like C major, G major, F major are like the first ones they introduce. So you just have 1 flat and 1 sharp. Where did you saw in that Piano Town, book 2, all the sharp keys, there they were. But behold, so she was using a multi-key approach. Do you see that? And there's advantages to that. You'd be ready to introduce scales maybe a little earlier. I think a weakness of favor would be probably unless you're intuitively working on scales. But look what they've done to combat that. They know that that's an area that they haven't done. This would be another thing that I own for myself. And if a student's really struggling, just like that sight reading book, this is something, and it tells me when to incorporate it and how to use it, so that you are introducing. So there's like a progress chart at the beginning. And there's book 2 as well. It also introduces the arpeggios at the same time. So they have a technique and artistry book, but they don't do a ton of scale work in it. But this is where you can be intuitive and pay attention to, that's an area that they're going to maybe not be as strong. And I'm not going to allow that.
I remember that my piano teacher had a separate book for scales.
Yeah. And it's important. But thankfully, there are things you can be incorporating, and that's where you need to also inform your parents. That's where some of their studio fees or your registration fee, that's so you have those kind of books on hand and have a good library of supplementary materials. Let's say I have a student that is progressing, but their hand size is really still too tiny. I might pull out popular hits, or these are movies, themes, and kind of like say, hey, for a little while, we're going to have you pick a couple from these and kind of just slow them down just a smidge. Yeah, awesome.
At what level or age would you start scale?
Oh boy. That's a good question. Sarah, did you have something to weigh in?
Well, like, I don't know if this is right, because I just started last year teaching lessons, but like, my little girl is like the first time ever playing piano, and like, I have 3 like first time players this school year, and last year with the little girl, I just started kind of almost like right away, like we would just do like she can do her like C pentatonic scale, and then like the chord, and then the arpeggio, and so we do that, and then we do it in F, we do it in G, and I just have her go and like tell me, I'm like, oh yeah, man, I'm so forgetful, I'm getting so old. How many like what is that? What is the F scale? And she's like, oh, it has B flat. And so we do that, and she can do C, F, G, D.
I highly recommend 4 scales. But as soon as the book introduces the key signature, I introduce the scale. Okay, and I introduce the finger. And I like to kind of like, for fun, if I see that they're like bored, they're staring at the window, or they're getting really restless on the bench, I'm like, okay, I want you to experiment with me. We're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. Now let's try this. I want you to go F, G, A, B flat. We're just doing that passage. Now this time I want you to add 1, 2, 3, 4 thumb. And so we'll actually do the hardest parts of scales, so that eventually when I kind of give them the full shebang, I've already done all of the hardest parts of it. And I like to have them experience probably first the parallel, where the thumbs get to move first, the same direction.
Those are always my favorite.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Start easiest so they get the understanding first, not the hardest part where their thumbs and No. Get them trying a contrary motion, then the right hand, and then often I will play with them the left hand so they get to see it a ton of times before I ever think that they're going to do it. So I think the experiences with scales first is important. So disadvantages of this as well, harmonic reading and playing is often delayed. So is harmony really critical to play? Well, you bet it is. So that would be something you want to be aware of. But maybe you would grab a book I have a chord-based book that's teaching by chord, so that's the multi-key. So I sometimes grab like a cool, like the New World Symphony, Dvorak theme, we're just gonna try this song for fun, and I think you can totally tackle it, easy peasy. There's some new elements you're not used to, but I know you'll get it. So be creative that way. And sometimes maybe you would use like a supplementary book from here, maybe even one level beyond that does have some chords that they're familiar with the tune, so they could probably do it pretty well. So you remember, just because the book has this sequence, you could, for different reasons, incorporate, you know, the hymn book or a pop book, depending on the interest that you learned in the interview. You know that they love Disney princesses. So you should have a Disney book in your library ready to go for that level. And as soon as you sense boredom, you need to start incorporating that in. Help them fall in love with music again, and then you can be more focused on instruction. My husband's in Des Moines. If the kids are running around the room, even if his lesson is like spot on, is he teaching a lot to them? So you have to have their interest. And so keep that in mind, no matter what method it is, okay? It's time to go. That little notification tells us so. Oh dear. So hopefully